the Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience presented by Underdog Week 7 Fantasy Football Rankings by position. You want to jump around to position? Hit the time code. You just want the rankings themselves in handy list form? Hit the description. The link is down there. Or you can subscribe to Mayo Media on Substack and find them there as well, sent directly to your inbox. Reminder to you good people to smash a like. And if you want to get into a draw for $500 cash, there's an easy way to do it. You sub to Mayo Media Network on YouTube right now. That's a way to get ballots in the draw. The way to get the most ballots in the draw is to subscribe, rate, and review 5 stars the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast on Apple or Spotify. All right? Running back injuries for week number 7. Tajee Spears, Travis Etienne, and Jerome Ford are all not in the rankings because they're probably not going to play with their injuries this week. Nick Chubb, I have as expected in. Ditto for Devin Singletary. Ditto for Jordan Mason. Now, all of these rankings can change based on the injuries. And we'll go through each of the different scenarios just so you have an idea of what you should be doing if we don't hear about this information until way later in the week. I always have my update on the weekend where I go through everything again once we get the full Friday injury report. And I'll have all of these injuries updated in the newsletter as well. If you want to take a look at that throughout the course of the week, I update it every single morning. So those guys are probably going to be in. Jonathan Taylor, James Cook, Cordero Patterson, Zamir White, Ramondre Stevenson, Rashad White, Brian Robinson, Devin Achane, Aaron Jones are all questionable. Some of them I have in the rankings. Some of them I have out of the rankings based on where they were heading into the first day of practice. And again, I'll go through each of those scenarios in the rankings here in a second. But first, let's get to the running back rankings for week number 7. Kyren Williams is number 1. Saquon number 2. Alvin Kamara, Kenneth Walker, Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon. And I think that those, I guess, Breece Hall, Josh Jacobs, J.K. Dobbins, Chuba Hubbard, Jahmyr Gibbs, Tony Pollard. That is my must-start line for the week. I think that those 13 running backs, as it's currently constituted, are the must-start plays of the week. Jordan Mason is number 14. Ray Davis, James Conner, David Montgomery, Brian Robinson Jr., Aaron Jones, Najee Harris, Devin Achane, Chase Brown, Kareem Hunt, Bucky Irving, Antonio Gibson, Rashad White, Tank Bigsby, Alexander Madison, Javonte Williams, and Tyrone Tracy Jr. are the top 30. Trace Sermon then comes in at number 31, followed by Eckler, Warren, Justice Hill, and Raheem Mostert. Now, a lot of these guys can move up and down, and even someone like Jaylen Warren, I do think has substantially more value with Russell Wilson playing quarterback against the Jets than Justin Fields playing quarterback against the Jets. Russell Wilson, what we've seen over the past few years, is far more prone to dump the ball off, and that would be the Jaylen Warren wheelhouse. So I have Russell Wilson in the rankings over Justin Fields this week, so I have Jaylen Warren propped up to the number 33 in the rankings. We saw a week ago that his hamstring is fine. He's back on the field close to 100% and still playing all these passing downs, and it's a 1.5 point spread right now, and you can run on the Jets, but I would expect that to be primarily Najee Harris. If Russell Wilson's going to drop back and throw more often than Justin Fields would, I would expect to see a lot of Jaylen Warren on the field versus what we've seen the past 2 weeks or so. So instead of a 30% snap share rate, maybe a 45%. And if they get way down in the game, you could see way more of Jaylen Warren. But he's nothing more than a low-end 3 or flex play with a little bit of upside right now. Same thing is for Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary. I have no idea what the split is going to be between them if Singletary returns. Singletary might be the starter. He might go back to his regular role of a 75-25 split. And that's 75 for him, 25 for the rest, which would probably be all Tracy right now. But reports out of the Giants camps have already said that Tyrone Tracy has earned more touches. He looks explosive. It reminds me a lot of the Bucky Irving, Rashad White situation we saw before Rashad White ended up getting hurt and Bucky Irving took over. Irving just looked like the better back, especially on the ground. But we've even seen through the air that Tyrone Tracy looks pretty good and has that confidence of Daniel Jones, both with route running, with dump offs, and in pass protection. But there's the big caveat that Brian Daboll loves Devin Singletary. I mean, they had him in Buffalo. He goes to the Giants, tries to get him, can't get him, and now he's finally available from Houston, and he scoops him up. So it's probably going to be a 50-50 split. I think the talent rests on Tyrone Tracy. If you wanted to play Singletary over Tracy, because those are your only two choices, and you went with Singletary, I can't begrudge that situation. You could be absolutely right. I just don't see a ton of upside against the Eagles this week, on the ground at least, just because the Eagles defense has been... It's hard to say if the Eagles defense is actually good. If you look at it statistically, it's very good. They just played a string of really bad offenses. Like, oh yeah, great work. You shut out Cleveland or shut them down. Okay, fantastic. Everyone else does that too. New Orleans, after the first 2 weeks, you made them look terrible offensively. Well, everyone else has made them look terrible offensively. But eventually, you do get some credit and the benefit of the doubt. So I'm going to give that to the Eagles defense at this point in time. So let's run through some of the different scenarios we can look at right now in terms of injury. And we'll start off with Jonathan Taylor. If Jonathan Taylor plays, he is going to be number 8 in the running back rankings. That would put him firmly behind Joe Mixon, 1 spot ahead of Breece Hall. I don't think they're going to bring him back from this ankle sprain. I mean, I was wrong about Joe Mixon last week when I thought that he would I thought he would be the primary back in the Texans' backfield. And Dameon Pierce touched the ball more than I thought, but Mixon just looked good in that game against the Patriots. That could be on the Patriots, but Mixon's looked very good against the Colts and Patriots so far this season when, at least by all accounts, has been healthy. He's healthy right now, so we're going to keep firing Joe Mixon this week, and I think the same thing's going to happen with Jonathan Taylor, especially with Anthony Richardson back in the fold. Reminder to all of you, too, if you're watching this before Thursday Night Football, there is a free pick available at Underdog right now. Use code Mayo at Underdog, and you do not have Underdog yet. Let's say you're a person you're Underdog curious. You don't have Underdog, and you want to get in. Well, here's an incentive for you. Use code Mayo at Underdog right now. Not only do you get a deposit bonus of up to $1,000, you get a free pick for Thursday Night Football. Bo Nix higher or lower than half a yard. I know Bo Nix is bad. He should most definitely end the game with higher than 0.5 total yards. So passing, rushing, and receiving all combined into one for Bo Nix. So I suggest that you get in on that right now and pair it with, I don't know, Bub Means, higher receiving yards, or Spencer Rattler, higher rushing yards, whatever it might be, or just save it for the rest of the week. Just have that in your back pocket, unlock that free pick, and then go look at some of the different plays that we have for the Sunday slate alone. So code Mayo at Underdog right now to get in that game. And obviously, as always, well, not as always, as I mentioned earlier, if you just go and subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast, leave that 5-star rating and review, you're getting that drop for $500 cash. No even real entry on your end. Just do that. Takes 10 seconds and boom, you're in. So that's what Jonathan Taylor is up to. Aaron Jones, we don't know about him. If he is out, Ty Chandler would go into the Najee zone. So Ty Chandler would move up right after Najee, maybe even Chase Brown. A-Chain I have in right now, and we'll get to him in a second. I like Chase Brown far more than Zach Moss right now. We saw it even towards the end of the game against the Giants on Sunday night. The moment Zach Moss put the ball, he threw it on the ground. And that was the last that we saw of Zach Moss. It was all Chase Brown after that. And he's handled 100% of the red zone rushing and receiving work over the past 2 games as well. So it's very firmly Chase Brown over Zach Moss. Not that Zach Moss has gone away or can't recapture this job or is never going to play again. He's going to be there, but Chase Brown is the one that you want to start in fantasy for the time being. He's at number 22. I would insert Chandler just because I know that he would get like 75% of the touches against the Lions, right in above, in this zone. 1 spot behind Chase Brown, 1 spot ahead of Kareem Hunt. If you want to put him behind Kareem Hunt, I would get that too. But if this is a game where Kansas City falls behind, we're going to see a lot less of Kareem Hunt and more of Samaje Perine. It's only a 1-point spread, and Kansas City can more than definitely run away with this game too against the Niners in San Francisco. So Kareem Hunt remains at number 23, but that's where I insert Ty Chandler. Ty Chandler is really bad. That's one part of this too, that if he was full go on 75% of the backfield touches, the receiving work, and he was good, he would be like running back number 10 for the week against the Lions at home as favorites. But he's outside, he's like the bottom 10 in the league right now amongst running backs with enough qualified carries and like breaking tackles, explosive rate. He's just not awesome. But if he gets the goal line work, then he'll be worth a plug and play if you need someone, if Aaron Jones is out in that situation. If James Cook plays, I would put him at number 18. So I still trust David Montgomery more, obviously. Montgomery doesn't get all of the work, but he's just scoring a touchdown every single week, and he plays in one of the best offenses in the league. So you play David Montgomery. I think Gibbs' upside is higher for those giant games, but that doesn't mean that you can't play David Montgomery at the same time. I would insert James Cook right here as big favorites against Tennessee, ahead of Brian Robinson, because A, we don't know about Brian Robinson, if he's going to play or not. I think that he's going to play, but again, they're playing Carolina. Great matchup for him. He should get the goal line work. But if we're in a spot where they get up by a bunch and Robinson's hurt and he hasn't scored his touchdown yet, well, they're probably going to yank him from the game. And then we're going to see a bunch of Jeremy McNichols in the spot that you would expect to see Brian Robinson in. Now, if Brian Robinson doesn't play, I actually kind of like McNichols more than Eckler this time around. I liked Eckler last week. It was our best play on underdog, higher than 7.75 fantasy points, and boom, that hit in the first half. That was awesome. And they even took it off the board once that news was made official. But McNichols in a lopsided spread, if you think that Washington can cover or at least live up to the 7.5 point spread and they win by a touchdown or more, you're going to see a lot of McNichols, and you know he's going to get that goal line work. If he doesn't get it snaked from him by Jaden Daniels, then he's going to have a pretty positive day. So I'd play McNichols over Eckler in that spot. So if there's no Brian Robinson, I would actually move Jeremy McNichols right ahead of Alexander Mattison. So one spot behind Tank Bigsby, one spot ahead of Mattison. Not a must start by any means, but a guy who has incredible 2-touchdown upside. And I bump Eckler up a little bit anyway. I have him at 32. He'd go to like 30 or something like that. He about stays the same because his role doesn't change as much. He sees a bit more on the ground, but not a ton. He might see an uptick of like 20% more carries if there's no Brian Robinson in a big lead game, but they probably try to keep him a little bit healthier as well. So back to James Cook for a second. So even if James Cook is active, it seems like he was close on Monday night, but we'll see where he is with his toe injury. They're 8.5 point favorites at home against Tennessee. That it's the big play potential. Loved what I saw from Ray Davis. So if it's just Ray Davis, he's number 15, and you can kind of lock him in. We saw that he's clearly the guy over Ty Johnson when the Bills need to run the ball and hell, even throw the ball. You thought that Ty Johnson would have been used more in the passing game. Not the case. But if Cook is back, he will be reused in the receiving games. That hurts Ray Davis in that spot. So behind David Montgomery, I think is the right position because if they get up by a bunch, if Cook isn't the one who has done that damage, then they probably turn it over to Ray Davis anyway, or at least start splitting it up between them. And they might be in a split situation anyway, with Cook being the slight lean, Davis being the lesser lean when both are healthy. If Cook is still banged up with this toe problem, then we might see more Ray Davis than normal anyway. Probably wouldn't play Ray Davis. I'd have him behind McNichols, for example, if Brian Robinson was out. I would have him in the Austin Eckler zone, just behind Austin Eckler, if Brian Robinson is in this week. There's a lot of different combinations we got going on. I'll try to walk through them all, like I said. Davis would drop to basically right here. He would drop to the Justice Hill, Austin Eckler, Raheem Mostert type role. Now with Mostert, if Devin Achane is out, I would bump him up to running back number 18. Jalen Wright would be my preferred play behind Mostert, but I probably wouldn't want to play him anyway. Nick Chubb, I have back in. As I mentioned before, there's going to be no Jerome Ford. Pierre Strong and Donta Foreman are going to work in the Browns backfield. Obviously no Amari Cooper. More on him in a little bit. But Nick Chubb is number 36 in the running back rankings. I just cannot see him having a full go in the backfield coming off a devastating knee injury that's kept him out over a year. If he gets 10, 12 touches out of the backfield, which probably doesn't include any of the receiving work, but you hope he gets like a goal line touch if the Browns can ever make it to the goal line, which, we'll see. We'll see if they can get down there. But double-digit touches would be nice for Nick Chubb. I could drop him even lower than this. Hell, I could drop him number 41 and not really have a problem behind any of it. Jordan Mason. So Jordan Mason, I think if he plays, is sort of in that James Cook situation where he has the shoulder injury. He is at the risk of re-aggravation. I put him right behind Tony Pollard, where I had that line of demarcation of must start to the next tier of guys. Now, if I knew that Jordan Mason was both playing and he would get all of the work, he'd be running back 5 or so. But we don't know that because he might be starting, but I don't know how much he's going to play with that re-aggravation. Are they going to split it up between him and Guerendo? So I think a hedge out right now is Jordan Mason at running back number 14. If he is not able to go, I would move Guerendo up to right behind Tank Bigsby again. This Alexander Mattison is at number 28 right now. Don't want to play Alexander Mattison even in a really nice matchup, albeit as huge underdogs against the Rams, but the Rams defense is not very good. So that's where I would put in Guerendo, who had one really nice run at the very end of the game on Thursday night against the Seahawks, but did not look very good beyond that. And Juszczyk still stole the goal line carry, and Patrick Taylor stole half of his work. So I wouldn't trust him. It's not like it's an instant plug and play like we saw with Mason. Hey, McCaffrey's out, you play Mason, he's getting all the touches. I don't think it works that way. If Jordan Mason is out, I don't just expect Isaac Guerendo to end up with 85% of the opportunity out of the backfield. I think it's going to be more of a split situation. And if those valuable touches end up going to Juszczyk, or hell, if they end up going to Debo on goal line carries, then he's absolutely screwed. So you probably wouldn't want to play him on that. So 28, I think, is the hedge play. There's obviously upside that goes along with him, but 28 makes sure that there's guys in front of him that do have a little bit of a similar floor and equivalent upside, right around the zone of upside. Maybe not as high, but the floor isn't as low at the same time. So you also have to figure out what kind of fantasy team that you have. Zamir White, if he plays, then just White and Madison go outside the top 35. Hell, Amir Abdullah might be the one you want to play in this backfield. Just don't really want to do much with the Raiders this week outside of Brock Bowers. Stevenson, Ramondre Stevenson. If Ramondre Stevenson is in, Antonio Gibson goes from running back number 25 in the London game down to number 39 in the London game, and Stevenson would slot in at number 30. And that would be one spot ahead of Tyrone Tracy Jr., one spot behind Javonte Williams, although we probably wouldn't know that information. So that's why Williams is at number 29, because he plays on Thursday night. We know that he is going to play. If you're still waiting out on Stevenson, you can't wait for a guy in a Thursday night game, because hell, he will have already played in that spot. Code Mayo, by the way, to get that free pick in the Thursday night game with Bo Nix. And those are all the different permutations and combinations of running back injuries mixed with rankings for week number 7. For almost about 2 decades, the irons were really the only good part of my golf game, unless you include 300-yard drives, which meant hitting it about 150 yards straight and 150 yards with slice into the woods to the right. So I finally went and got lessons, straightened out my swing, and all of a sudden I could drive the ball pretty decently, pretty straight. And then my irons just kind of went wayward with the new compression that I was getting onto the ball. So it was time for me to make a change with my irons. So when I heard about the new PXG Black Ops irons and how they can dramatically improve my game, I had to give them a try. Booked a fitting with the PXG location, brought in my current irons, and took the PXG challenge. The staff was amazing. We worked on my ball flight through TrackMan in order to find the perfect irons and the perfect length and the perfect loft for what my game demands these days. And the new Black Ops irons are incredibly easy to hit, they maximize performance, and they're fun. Oh, and they're only $149.99 a stick. That is a great price for a great golf iron. So take the PXG Irons Challenge. It's a ton of fun, and if PXG's new Black Ops irons don't outperform your current irons by delivering either more distance or tighter dispersion, that means better accuracy, during your fitting, you'll get a $250 MasterCards reward card. Hurry, this offer ends October 7th. Book your fitting today at pxg.com. That's pxg.com. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Supercharger, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Wide receiver injuries heading into the week. Thursday Night Football, Olave and Shaheed both appear like they're going to be out. So you're going to get some Bub Means and Cedric Wilson and Tipton. That's not great news. So other than that, we have Dontavian Wicks. I have is leaning out right now with the shoulder injury. They called him week to week, but we'll see on him. Zay Jones, I have leaning in. Ditto with Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper, and Cooper Kupp. I have in the rankings right now. I have Malik Neighbors back in with a concussion. He's no guarantee to play for the moment. So if you still have Darius Slayton, do not drop him from your fantasy roster as of yet. Marvin Harrison, I have out of the rankings right now with this concussion. They play on Monday Night Football, so Saturday is is going to be the key day for them, but I wanted to do the rankings with him out of it to see what the Arizona receiving core looks like. Zay Jones expected to be back this week. He missed the 4 games with a suspension. They did not activate him last week because he had a hamstring issue. He should be back for week number 7, Monday night at home against the Chargers. I have Elijah Moore as out right now, Quentin Johnson as in, Robert Woods is out, Jacoby Myers as in. All those things could change with practice reports are all questionable for the moment. So in terms of the rankings, before we jump into Cooper and Davante Adams' long-term value, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Jamar Chase, Deontay Johnson, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Cooper Kupp, Drake London, Devonta Smith, Malik Neighbors, Chris Godwin. That's the top 10. Jaden Reed, Steph Diggs, Garrett Wilson, Zay Flowers, Mike Evans, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Debo Samuel, Tank Dell, Josh Downs, into McLaurin, Brian Thomas, Davante Adams, and Amari Cooper at 23 and 24. Darnell Mooney, Juju, Jamison Williams, Tyreek Hill, George Pickens, again with Russell Wilson currently, and that doesn't really change all that much for me, whether Fields or Wilson ends up playing. With Ayuk, Wendell, Michael Wilson, the top Arizona receiver, Judy, Slayton still, and that's with Neighbors in. Slayton's still pretty good here as a low-end number 3. Pittman, Tutu Atwell with cutback, Jackson Smith in Jigba, Xavier Worthy, Jordan Addison, Demario Douglas, Quentin Johnson. There's Bub Means. So Bub Means is the highest of all of the New Orleans receivers and these Thursday night receivers you really don't want much to do with here. Shakir, McConkey, Lazard, Lockett, DeAndre Hopkins, Kirk, Tucker, and Pierce. So that's the top 50 at wide receiver right now. I think that if you were looking for cheap guys to play, in terms of being able to pick them up off the waiver wire. You can't pick up Mooney anymore, but Ray McLeod is still out there. Lockett still might be out there. I know what people are doing with JSN because all these guys are up and down each week. Just that's a game that I'm really going to try to overload in daily fantasy this week. And I think for your fantasy lineups weekly, if you're looking for a plug and play or you need an injury replacement, that would be the game to go to. Both those, Seattle has played 0 defense each of the past 3 weeks. And we've seen Atlanta's offense start to click bigly. And then on the other side, Atlanta's offense really hasn't been all that good either. They got shredded by Tampa Bay, and even last week, it's not like Carolina didn't put up points against them. And Seattle's offense, if nothing else, when Geno's not missing wide open receivers, is still pretty potent from time to time, and they have a ton of playmakers. Love to see, by the way, I didn't mention this with the running backs, Kenneth Walker using all this receiving work, because that used to be the knock against him, right? Was they would get behind in these games, and you just wouldn't see Kenneth Walker anymore. It'd be Charbonnet, or they'd bring in Travis Homer, and they'd just dump it off to them the entire time. No, not anymore. Each of the 2 best receiving totals that Kenneth Walker has ever had on a target share basis has been each of the past 2 weeks since returning from injury. So up or down, it don't matter for Kenneth Walker. He's going to be on the field, which really saves his fantasy value on a week-to-week basis. But let's talk about the short-term and long-term outlooks for Davante Adams and Amari Cooper. So I think that Cooper actually has substantially more upside than Davante Adams. Unless we get into a situation where Rodgers loves Adams so much that he stops throwing to Garrett Wilson, I don't see that being the case. So Garrett Wilson still remains the Jets wide receiver 1 for me. I think Lazard might actually get hit a little bit more, and the overall upside for Wilson gets hit a lot more because you have a capable receiver that's around anyway. But just remember how much that Rodgers loved throwing to Davante Adams inside the 20-yard line. It was basically every play. That is who he was looking for. A lot like what he's doing with Allen Lazard so far this season, where when he needs to make a throw, he trusts where Lazard is going to be because they have that connection. Adams and Rodgers, and maybe it doesn't happen in week 1, have a better version of that connection, mainly because Davante Adams, even at age 31, still way better than Allen Lazard. So I think he knocks down Lazard, not that Lazard becomes completely irrelevant. Mike Williams becomes completely irrelevant here. And just the drive per drive, the shorter routes, those over the middles, like we've been seeing with Garrett Wilson. He's going to continue to pile those up. So I'd still expect Wilson to lead in target share on this team, but it's probably not going to be 45%. It might be 25%, with Adams coming in at 20, but the more valuable touches week over week might end up going to Davante Adams, unless Lazard still weasels his way in there. It's just week 1 with Adams coming off the injury that I would have a little bit of issue with it. Whether he runs every route is unfamiliar completely with this offense, but just being buddies with Aaron Rodgers and knowing where he should run and Rodgers knowing where Adams is going to run is going to make that catch-up process so much faster than it would in different situations. So I think that Adams has the potential to move up and maybe pass Garrett Wilson. I would still rather have Wilson than Adams the rest of the season. I'm not going to pretend like I'm not going to be one of these guys, well, you got to get Devontae Adams, but I think they're both going to be pretty close to top 15 receivers the rest of the way, with the rest of that team dropping off outside of Breece Hall. With Amari Cooper, I mean, is there a better position that he could have gone to? Like, no one on the Bills receiving corps is any good whatsoever. Like, Mac Hollins, like their most consistent dude right now. I actually think it helps Shakir. Long run. Shakir's still banged up, so that's why he wasn't as good on Monday night. Because even when we saw Sauce Gardner line up against dudes, it was like against MVS, who they've cut since trading for Amari Cooper. I do think the catching up process with Josh Allen might take a little bit longer than it will with Adams, so I would expect Cooper to come in and probably garner like a 30 to 35% target share within like 3 weeks' time. This week, probably a little bit lower, and as giant favorites, he could get scripted out of this game pretty quickly. But I think they're going to make an emphasis this week, especially to force the ball to Amari Cooper, at least early on in this game, try to get him a touchdown to show this, not only was this a good move, but see how this opens up the rest of our offense. So I do think it elevates Shakir a little bit. He's still a wide receiver 3-ish for the rest of the season. Just if he's not going to get 8 to 10 targets a game, he's not going to be super valuable. That's going to be Amari Cooper in this offense. Now that he is, yes, I understand that he leads the league in drops, but some of those drops aren't completely fair if you've been watching the Browns games. A few of them are most definitely on him, but a lot of those are like balls that are thrown slightly behind him that he's reaching back for, that he just tips up and they end up becoming picks, and they shouldn't be behind him because he's absolutely wide open. And that's the big key with this, is that Amari Cooper is still generating a bunch of separation. And this basically knocks Keon Coleman just out of the park. Like Keon Coleman might not see the field most of the time here. Amari Cooper also a very good blocker as well, so he'll be on the field as much as possible once things get ramped up to full speed and he becomes completely familiar with this playbook. But I would not have any issues starting Amari Cooper this week at, like I said, running back or wide receiver number 24 for the week is where I like Amari Cooper. Rest of the season, I probably like him as a mid-tier 2, low-end number 1. I actually like him more than Devontae Adams, fantasy-wise. I think Devontae Adams is a better player than Amari Cooper by a little bit. It's not like Amari Cooper's a young man as well. Like, he's pushing 31 now, I think. He's 30, about to be 31. He's like a year and a half younger than Devontae Adams. But just the role and potential opportunity that you can see in this Bills offense is gigantic. It was elevating Shakir because he was the only dude there. And now you put a better player in that spot, should be good for Amari Cooper. Much better than it was in Cleveland. He's a must start every single week, and as long as he stays healthy, like I said, top 15 wide receiver rest of the way. If you could try to flip him, I mean, I'm trying to think of like someone like Deontay Johnson, who I have ranked inside my top 5 right now. Eventually, they're going to go back to Bryce Young. Once the season is completely out of reach, probably like week 12, week 13, so you're going to get some more good weeks out of Deontay Johnson. But if you trade him right now, you might be able to trade him at the very top of the market, knowing that if you need these wins to make the playoffs right now, like you have 2 wins or 1 win, you're going to need Deontay Johnson to help you come back and try to make the playoffs. If you are 5-1 right now, or 6-0, or even 4-2, and you have Deontay Johnson, he's your wide receiver 3, you could potentially upgrade that spot for the playoffs right now, because I just don't think that we're going to see Andy Dalton. I mean, there's always the chance he gets hurt and Bryce Young is back in, then all these guys are useless. Or Andy Dalton gets replaced in week 13 or 14, right when the fantasy playoffs are starting, because Carolina still only has 1 win, and then all of a sudden they're trying to get the number 1 pick again. And Dalton, although it's funny to say that even if they don't win another game, Andy Dalton doesn't help. He makes them more competitive. At least offensively, he makes them more competitive. He actually throws the ball to Deontay Johnson, and it's not 80 feet over his head or bounced 20 feet in front of him. It goes to him, and he's able to produce fantasy value. He produced 0 fantasy value with Bryce Young. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to map out the rest of your season with someone like Deontay Johnson. The other players right now, Juju I have at number 26, and Xavier Worthy I have at number 38. I do feel like they try to manufacture touchdown looks for Xavier Worthy every single week, but he's just not a focal point of the passing game. Maybe this is a week where we see Justin Watson end up coming back up. I was big on him 2 weeks ago, and he ran the most routes of anyone on Kansas City and garnered 0 targets to speak of. Maybe that changes against San Francisco, and this is just a week-to-week thing. We just happened to witness the big Juju game, and then it swings back this week, and he's like 2 for 12, and Watson's the one doing a ton. Kelsey is the only one in this passing game that I trust, but with Worthy, I think he's pretty solidified as between wide receiver 30 and 40 for the rest of the season. He's like a fringe must-start guy at receiver every week, depending on the size of your league. In 12-team leagues, he's a back-end number 3 receiver flex play, and he does have substantial upside because of his speed and how they utilize him within this offense. But if you ever think that he's going to be a guy that ends up with 7 catches on 11 targets, I just don't see that happening. That is not how they use this type of player in the Chiefs offense. That's how they use the Juju type of player, model of player, and where he lines up on the field. Worthy's like the advanced version of Kadarius Toney. He's not the lesser version of Tyreek Hill in terms of how this Chiefs offense runs. Now, he has the speed of Tyreek Hill, and he's not a moron like Kadarius Toney. So meeting somewhere in the middle, like the advanced version of Kadarius Toney is a good player, a good fantasy player, but he's going to leave you in the lurch sometimes when he doesn't end up with a touchdown because he'll have like 3 for 41 and like a rush for 8 yards or something. If he can't make the first guy miss, then the fantasy day isn't going to be there. But the bet on him is that he's always going to make the first guy miss when you play him at least, and he's able to have those big boom touchdown games, thus making him fantasy worthy. But Xavier, like I have behind like Tutu Atwell right now. So Cooper Kupp I have back. If they have him back in, I wouldn't expect 21 targets for him, but double digits to say the least, because that's where Cooper Kupp is at in this offense, especially as big favorites against the Raiders. That hurts Jordan Whittington. I think Tutu Atwell stays on the field with Demarcus Robinson. At least that's my hunch at the moment. Tutu Atwell has been awesome since both Nacua and Cooper Kupp have went down. He is still the deep threat in this offense. So the routes that you see that Whittington is running are the Cooper Kupp routes, hence why I dropped Whittington way down as a must bench and with Cooper Kupp in, and then keeping Tutu Atwell right around where he should be. But these deep A-dot targets, especially against a bad Raiders secondary with a lack of pass rush right now. Like if Max Crosby is back to 100% health and can rattle Matt Stafford, then yeah, it's going to be quick dump offs to Cooper Kupp the entire time. But if he has a look down the field, then it's going to be a lot of Tutu Atwell. The return of Cooper Kupp also hurts Colby Parkinson. Demarcus Robinson stays exactly the same in this offense because his role never changed to begin with. And that's really about it. Like I have Quentin Johnson, although he's injured right now at number 41 in the rankings. That's Monday night. So maybe you want to be a bit more pensive if you don't hear about the official reports about him and his injury status before, let's say, Saturday, and you really need to make some decisions about the weekend. If not, Ladd McConkey would move back up, but I still think that Quentin Johnson is the wide receiver 1 in this offense in a really nice matchup. This is the range that I like a little bit here. Like if you're desperate need for a touchdown or guys in deeper leagues that you can go pick up, you can't really pick up Romeo Dobbs because he's probably in, but he's still firmly number 2 on this team in this matchup against Houston. I expect this to be lower scoring than I think a lot of people do. This is why that after Jaden Reed that a lot of these guys are bumped down on the Packers offense, and I think there's going to be a lot of running in this game as well. It's just that the Packers blocking has been good, but the pressure rate from Houston has been off the charts good, which means that maybe Romeo Doubs ends up with 2 touchdowns again. One of those touchdowns from Jordan Love last week was a falling down off the back foot like duck up in the air, and just no one was around Romeo Doubs, and he ends up walking into the end zone. Against a better defense, I don't think that ends up happening, and that probably turns into a pick or a sack. So that's kind of what you have to play with. But he does have upside. Jacoby Myers should be back. Xavier Legette continues to do some good work in the Carolina offense. Noah Brown, I do have as the number 2 now that he's returned from, he had the hamstring injury first, then he had the groin injury. What we saw against the Ravens last week, he is back. If Jaden Daniels throws more than 25 times in this game, I would expect Noah Brown to be the second best of the receiving core of Washington, but that is substantially behind what Terry McLaurin does because there's always the chance that Zacchaeus or Diami Brown. I just prefer Noah Brown the most. We even saw it last week. 3rd and 4th down, if McLaurin was covered and Zach Ertz wasn't wide open over the middle of the field, what was Daniels doing? He was forcing the ball into tight spots to Noah Brown, and Noah Brown was catching him. So he's a go-to guy. There's trust there between Jaden Daniels and Noah Brown, and the talent for Noah Brown, I just think is much higher than all these other guys. All these other guys are speed dudes who have very singular roles of what they do. Brown is fast, but he's also physical, can run routes at the same time, and he has good hands. He's not a burner like Diami Brown or Zacchaeus, for that matter, but he's a better mix of all of them, and that's what keeps him on the field way more than the rest of these guys. Calvin Ridley, I have at 56. Listen, he'll probably have a good game this week against the Bills. It's mind-numbing trying to play this guy, knowing that Will Levis is throwing him the ball. It's just sad. Quarterback rankings, Anthony Richardson, I have as in. Derek Carr, obviously out with Spencer Rattler starting on Thursday Night Football. The rankings themselves. We go. Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Jordan Love. Top 5, Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith in that same game. Then Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, Sam Darnold, Brock Purdy, Drake May, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow. Baker Mayfield. That is the top 16 of the quarterback rankings this week. I just really like Drake May. I like anyone playing Jacksonville. Let's put it that way. And Drake May showed enough fantasy-wise that he has like a lot of Daniel Jones in him. And now with Malik Neighbors back, that's why I like Daniel Jones so much, that if the Eagles can put up some points and they have to play catch up with Neighbors back, with what he's able to do on the ground, is that he has a very high floor for a fantasy quarterback. And I think that Drake May might start to work into that situation as well. I don't trust him quite as much, but it's funny to have him ranked over Patrick Mahomes right now. But Mahomes is just dinking and dunking down the field. If the touchdowns don't come along with Patrick Mahomes, he's just not very good as a fantasy quarterback. As a real-life quarterback, he's awesome. He's the best. This we know. But if he's not running a ton and he's not throwing touchdowns and it's just a lot of 5-yard passes, 8-yard passes, yeah, it's a great completion percentage. You keep the picks down. You keep the chains moving. Great real-life strategy. Bad for your fantasy team. Drake May, he'll take a bunch of sacks. He'll get down in the game. He'll try to run for 30 yards. Try to bull guys over at the goal line to get in. He'll bomb it into terrible coverage. Like, I don't care if he throws interceptions in this game. I care that he's throwing deep. I care that he's always throwing, and I care that he's always running. And at least through 1 week, that's what we saw. Now, it wasn't pure catch-up mode against the Texans, but the Jags defense is just so bad that I have a little bit of faith that he can come through for us in this London game. So Drake May ahead of Patrick Mahomes this week if you're looking for a streamer. Outside of that, like if you wanted to play Burrow ahead of everyone, I could get behind it, but the Browns they slog games down. Their defense is very clearly not as good as it was perceived as coming into the year. And maybe this is a bad take on Burrow, and maybe I should move him a spot ahead of Mahomes. But just with Drake May running, listen, we saw Burrow run last week. Wouldn't expect to see that again. It just should be an easier type game for Joe Burrow. And even last week, he wasn't all that great against the Giants. And the Browns defense is constituted a lot like how the Giants defense operates. They're just going to attack with 4 guys, and honestly, it's probably just as good. Maybe not as good as the Giants pass rush, but equivalent to the Giants pass rush. And the Bengals weren't able to do anything handling that sort of pressure last week. It was just a lot of Burrow throwaways and like the big run that he had. So maybe they convert more in some of these red zone opportunities and he throws 4 touchdowns and then he gets there, but wouldn't bank on that. And same as Jared Goff. I like Jared Goff enough in most games, but with the way that Minnesota can ratchet up pressure, and listen, Jared Goff has been very good against the blitz so far this season. His numbers kind of go through the roof, but that blitz isn't getting home. The difference between the blitz for most teams and the blitz from Minnesota is that Minnesota brings it from a lot of different places. They really do mix it up, and then they can still generate pressure with their front 4 anyway. Just with the thought of the blitz coming, it really screws up quarterbacks. Now, this could be a game that ends up 45-40. And it's just a boat race, and you'll want to have started Jared Goff. I don't really hate his receiving options all that much. Not that I like Tim Patrick ranked super highly, but Jameson Williams is just outside the top 30. Amon-Ra is always going to be inside the top 10. Laporta is going to be inside the top 10. There's enough volume there, but we've seen these bad Goff games in the past, and they usually come with a bunch of hands in his face when he just doesn't have the wherewithal to evade and elude the pressure and make consistently good throws. We even saw it a little bit in the Arizona game earlier this year when he was being more pressured than you would have expected. And he got really lucky that he threw a pick 6 that just didn't count because the ref screwed up the 2-minute warning. The Vikings have been all over quarterbacks this year. If they do that to Goff, it could put him in a hole early. So I think what you'll see more are short passes, so the bulk yardage isn't going to be there, and just a lot of running between Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. So it's going to be a high reception total potentially for a lot of these receivers. Very few big plays and maybe some costly turnovers for Jared Goff in this game. Hence why I have him down a little bit. So the sits for this week, the bigger names are Goff and Mahomes, and I'm playing Daniel Jones and Drake May. Let's go with the loser quarterbacks in your fantasy lineups this week. Tight end injuries, Taysom Hill, not sure yet whether or not he's going to play on Thursday Night Football. He's been questionable all week. I have him out of the rankings right now. If he plays, I would have him at number 11 at tight end this week. He'd be a play. if he ends up going. TJ Hawkinson, I have as leaning in for Minnesota. Welcome back, TJ, presumably. Dallas Goedert, I have as out. Hayden Hurst, I have as out. And if you did not know, Luke Musgrave is on injured reserves. The tight end rankings, Kelsey, McBride, Kittle, those three must plays every single week. And this is a McBride ranking. He doesn't really move at all. He might move to 3 if Harrison plays, but he either is the 1 or 2 in this passing offense right now. And he runs the proper type of routes to beat up on the Chargers. And all the Chargers corners are down anyway, so the passing game is actually looking okay for them. Just they are lacking huge options right now. And we know what the Chargers are going to do on the other side, just grind out this game. So there might be fewer opportunities for passing attempts, just overall plays from the Arizona side of the ball. But those are the top 3. Then Bowers, Ingram, Laporta, and Hawkinson, Njoku. 4 through 8. I think that they're pretty much must plays. Kyle Pitts and Kincaid are talent plays. You know, Kyle Pitts right now is the number 8 fantasy tight end, averaging 6.8 points per game. That's how bad tight end has been. 6.8 points per game is tight end 8 for the season. That's hilariously bad. So I have him at number 9 with Hawkinson back. Then you have Dalton Kincaid. He's kind of in the same role as Pitts right now. Maybe Amari Cooper helps him out a little bit where he doesn't become the focal point of all defenses. After that, it's Hunter Henry and Tucker Kraft, Isaiah Likely. I think those 3 are on like a little mini tier by themselves, and they're probably in the Pitts and Kincaid zone, honestly. So that 9 to 13 is a tier of its own, and then you're just rolling dice. I mean, you're rolling dice at tight end anyway. You're rolling dice with everyone else anyway. If you need to go pick someone up, Schultz, I suppose, with Woods potentially out and Collins guaranteed out, that he just ends up running more routes, just like Xavier Hutchinson, who ran fewer routes last week than I would have expected, but they got up by a bunch in that game. Cade Otton, every 3 weeks is pretty good. Grant Calcaterra is filling in for Dallas Goedert. He actually got a substantial run last week when Goddard ended up out. He's probably the best, most available tight end that you could pick up, stream through your lineup if you needed one right now. Everyone else just kind of sucks. Fant, Ertz, Andrews. Andrews had a nice week. Great, trade him. Trade him right now. Maybe that there's a connection between Freiermuth and Russell Wilson, but we're not even sure that Russell Wilson's playing as of yet. But clearly Justin Fields does not have a rapport with anyone in the passing game. Maybe Russell Wilson will be able to elevate Pat Freiermuth, but that is not something that I would bet on right now. Finally, the defenses for the week. I got the Bills at number 1 against the Titans. Just stream against Will Levis. There's been a very good situation. Washington, not very highly owned, not a very good defense, but playing the Panthers, who have no offensive line left, and Washington does generate a ton of pressure. So they'll be able to turn over, at least put Andy Dalton into situations where, as big favorites, Dalton's going to have to pass in this game. So a lot of dropbacks, so a lot of opportunities to go get him. Put him under duress, make him make bad decisions, fumble the ball, return it. Just big upside for the Washington defense this week. Ravens, Steelers, Broncos, Bengals, Saints, Jets against Russell Wilson or Justin Fields at number 8. I like the Vikings. I already talked about how they can attack Jared Goff in this game. The Eagles at number 10 against Daniel Jones. I mean, he's not afraid to give it to you or just put the ball on the ground. Packers, Texans, Chargers, Colts, Dolphins. So the Packers and Texans are playing each other. I can just see... I have already talked about the pressure rate that can come from the Texans. The Packers at home at favorite. I mean, they're going to face a run on first down every single time. So they can bottle up Mixon there. They can put C.J. Stroud into a lot of 2nd and long and 3rd and long and just try to tee off on him. He's been very good under those circumstances so far this year, but this is a better defense than I think that they've seen. We saw what happened to the Texans against the Vikings. I don't think the Packers defense is as good as the Vikings, but I think they can probably try to generate enough pressure from weird angles to really throw Stroud off. And just when you know that a team runs on first down every single time, that if you can just stick them in those long situations, eventually you send enough heat, then good things are going to happen for your fantasy defense. All right, that will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience. Code Mayo at Underdog right now. Get you that free pick for Thursday Night Football. The rankings and injury report will be updated in the description every single day once we get more injury news. All right, smash a like, sub to the channel, and rate and review, and subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast. If you rate that on Apple or Spotify, you get in the draw for $500 cash. Okay, I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!